Hi guys, Olive here today to bring you my summer book haul. As always, I've had a lot of new books coming into my life recently. I've gone to a ton of library book sales. If you know me, you know those are my favorites. But I also went to half-price books fairly recently. I sold them some books that I was done with and then purchased some new books with that credit. I've gone to other bookstores in some other cities that I visited and locally here in Pittsburgh. I went to the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books. I've gotten some books from publishers, and in one case I got some books from an author. Just as always, lots and lots of new books always coming into my life. I am very grateful for that. I love getting new books. But as I normally do with these seasonal book hauls of mine, I've gone through the very large pile and I've plucked all the ones that remind me most of the summer months, and I'm going to show you those today. Since I mentioned the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books, though, these first two books I'm going to show you are actually tied to that event. I was asked to be the moderator of the mystery and thriller panel at the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books this year, which I happily accepted because if you saw my bookish bucket list items video that I made a while back, hosting an author event has been something I've wanted to do for a long time. It was a bucket list item. So given that opportunity, of course, I jumped at the chance to do it. And because I've wanted to do that for such a long time, I took it very seriously, and I think it went really well. I think everybody had a really good time. I'm really proud of how it turned out. And then after the event, one of the authors who was on my panel, I had such amazing authors. That also helped a lot in making it a really good event. But one of the authors reached out to me and offered to send me some of his books, which I happily accepted as well because working with him was such a treat. So he sent me two of his books. He sent me his debut, the first book in his first series that he put out, which is called Take Off. He published this under his own name, which is Joseph Reed, as you can see. This is a thriller series starring an air marshal. But he also sent me a copy of his newest book, which is called The Lockbox. This is the one that he was promoting the most at the festival. This one he published under a pseudonym, Parker Adams, because it is a departure from his initial series. So I think the publisher wanted to go with a pseudonym. This one stars a female safecracker who is coerced into participating in a heist. I know a ton about these books and about the books from the other authors who were on that same panel because I did so much research in the lead up to hosting that panel. I really wanted to make sure I was as prepared as possible. And ideally, that would have included reading every last book that they had published. But I looked it up. I think between the three of them who were on my panel, they've published something like 27 books. And I only had a matter of weeks to prepare. I mean, I'm a fast reader, but I'm not that good. So I knew there was just not a chance I was going to be able to read all those books. So I did what I could. But now that the panel is under my belts and I feel really good about how it went, I'm really excited to just actually sit down as a reader with some of their books and just enjoy them. So thank you again, Joe, for sending these my way. I can't wait to read these. I have another thriller to show you called The Golden Gate by Amy Chua. This is a historical thriller set in 1940s San Francisco, and it's all about the mystery of the assassination of a former presidential candidate who was found dead in his hotel room. And we also follow this crime through the eyes of the half Mexican but white passing detective who is investigating this crime. So this author is best known for her nonfiction, but this is her very first novel, which made me doubly intrigued by this book. The next two books I have to show you, I found these two at the exact same library book sale. The first one is called Rainbirds by Clarissa Gonawan, and this is another mystery thriller, except it's set in small-town Japan, and we see a man attempting to investigate his sister's murder. I have heard that this one is very atmospheric, which I love. You may have noticed that books that remind me of the summertime tend to have very warm colored covers. So lots of reds, oranges, yellows, even hot pinks, like vibrant colors feel like the summertime to me. And that's the main reason that I'm showing you All My Colors by David Quantick in this summer book haul. This is another mystery, but it seems to be a mystery in a very unique and surreal way. This one, which is set in 1970s Illinois, follows a man who seems to be the only person who can recall this famous classic novel. He loved it. He knows it by heart, but everyone around him keeps insisting that that book doesn't exist. That premise is so unique. I am so intrigued by it that I don't even mind that I've also heard that this one has some horror elements to it. I'm normally not a horror reader, but I'll put up with it to see what's going on in this book. Next, I got a book called The Unfortunates by J.K. Chukwu. I got this one from a great bookstore called Mahogany Books in Washington, D.C. They're in the National Harbor. Highly recommend if you're ever in the area. But this book, we follow a half Nigerian sophomore at an elite college who seeks the truth about what's been happening to a group of Black undergrads who have been dying. I've heard some rave reviews about this one. Believe it or not, I actually found this next one at a little free library. It's called Kaikai by Vaishnavi Patel. This is a debut novel. It's a fantasy that reimagines the life of a vilified queen from an ancient Indian epic. This one is in pristine condition. I can't believe I found this at a little free library, and as a bonus, it had a Pokemon card in it. It's like I was meant to find this. I also got some historical fiction, Empty Theater by Jack Gems, which has a gorgeous cover, and it aims to be a witty and satirical take on King Ludwig II of Bavaria and Empress Sisi of Austria. The next novel I have to show you also falls in line with my summer color palette. It's called Other People's Clothes by Kala Henkel. This is a work of literary fiction that follows two art students who are studying abroad in Berlin for a semester in the late 2000s, and they become infatuated with the Amanda Knox trial. I do always love a work of fiction that takes on events from within mainstream culture. The last novel I have to show you in this summer book haul is actually one I've already read. It's called If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is a novel that follows four friends living in South Korea, and it explores themes of the beauty standards there and how common plastic surgery has become because of those beauty standards. I know a good bit about that because I actually reviewed this one for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette when it came out, and I did a lot of research about that as I was preparing my review. I'll link that review below if you want to read it. I had a good time writing it. And when I saw this at Half Price Books, I decided to pick it up because it was great. I really enjoyed it. I'd love to reread it, but also because I saw inside this paperback, they actually blurbed my review from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which is always really cool to see. But on the topic of beauty, moving into nonfiction now, I picked up a copy of Eyeliner, A Cultural History by Zara Hankier. This is a book obviously all about eyeliner and how and why it's been used throughout history. I know Smiti from her channel Smiti N. She was one of my booktuber recommendations from earlier this year. I love her channel. She really enjoyed this book, and that was all the more convincing I needed to pick it up. But another book about physical appearances that I picked up is called The Body Shop: Parties, Pills, and Pumping Iron, or My Life in the Age of Muscle by Paul Solotaroff. This is a memoir about the author's experience bodybuilding in the 1970s, which was a trend that was obviously inspired by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I am now a lady who lifts, and so this one caught my attention because of that. But that book moved us very nicely into what I'll call the culture section of this summer book haul. And during my very first visit to Postman Books here in Pittsburgh, it's in the Strip District of Pittsburgh, I bought a book called Glory Days: The Summer of 1984 and the 90 Days That Changed Sports and Culture Forever by L. John Wertheim. And this is a book about this small window of time, the summer of 1984, where sports really became more mainstream than ever because there were very big names doing very big things in sports. I wasn't quite alive yet at this time, so hopefully I can live out the summer of 1984 by reading this book. A book that I picked up that blends science and culture is called Hitmakers: The Science of Popularity in an Age of Distraction by Derek Thompson. This book discusses the science of why things become popular and how things going viral is never really an accident. I definitely know why the topic of this next book became popular, because it is also popular with me personally. It's called SpongeBob SquarePants: The Authorized Funography by Paul Volpone. And this is a book all about the origin and the history behind the astronomically popular and infinitely memeable animated kids show. My husband got me this one for Christmas. We are both massive fans. We quote it to each other pretty much daily. Then I got a gorgeous naked hardback called Into the Groove: The Story of Sound from Tinfoil to Vinyl by Jonathan Squires. Scott. And this is a book that talks about the history of the technological developments that allowed human beings to record sound. Pretty much any book that involves music makes my ears perk up. Rounding out this culture section of my book haul is a book called Read Dangerously: The Subversive Power of Literature in Troubled Times by Azar Nafisi. This is one of the 24 nonfiction books I wanted to make a priority of reading this year, so I got myself my own copy to help me do that. This is by the author of Reading Lolita in Tehran, but in this new book she discusses how important literature is in our very divided modern world. But shifting into the food/nature books within this book haul, I actually ordered myself a used copy of a book called Holy Smoke, It's Mezcal by John McAvoy, because I am deeply obsessed with mezcal. I know it's very divisive because of the smoky flavor. Like, even my husband, who normally likes smoky things, does not like mezcal, but I love it. Anything with mezcal in it, I want to try. And so learning more about the history and culture behind it is highly appealing. Toward the end of the summer, I will be very excited when peach season finally gets here, which is why I included this next book in this summer book haul. It is called Epitaph for a Peach: 4 Seasons on My Family Farm by David Mas Masumoto. This is a memoir about a year in the life of an organic peach farmer. I also got this gorgeous looking book called The Spell of the Sensuous: Perception and Language in a More Than Human World by David Abram. And from what I read about this book, it seems to be a deeply philosophical work that explores our connection to, but also our disconnection from the natural world. This next one I've been meaning to get my hands on for quite some time. It's just more rare of a book, so I haven't had a chance to before now. It's called The Impenetrable Forest by Tor Hansen. I adore Tor Hansen. He's one of my favorite nature writers. I've read most of his books, except I've never read this one, which is his memoir of his time spent working with and studying gorilla populations in Uganda. I cannot wait to read this. I also got another book about wild animals called The Lady and the Panda: The True Adventures of the First American Explorer to Bring Back China's Most Exotic Animal by Vicky Constantine Croak. And this book tells the story of an American socialite in the 1930s who traveled to Tibet with the goal of bringing a giant panda back to the United States. I don't love that objective, but I am curious about this story. Stemming off that last book, though, I got another book called Tears of the Cheetah: The Genetic Secrets of Our Animal Ancestors by Stephen J. O'Brien. And this book attempts to tell the so-called genetic backstories of some famous animals, including the giant panda. The final book in this haul that has anything to do with animals is another one that I've read previously. It's called Rough Magic: Riding the World's Loneliest Horse Race by Laura Pryor Palmer. This is a memoir about how the author became the youngest ever winner of this very unique horse race in Mongolia. This is another one that I wrote a review of back when I read it for the first time. I will also link that review below if you're interested in reading it. But the gist is that I really, really enjoyed this. And so when I saw this copy at a library book sale, I picked it up because I would love to reread this book. I always find myself thinking about books set in hotter climates during the summer months, for obvious reasons. So it occurred to me to show you this next one in my summer book haul. It's called House of Rain: Tracking a Vanished Civilization Across the American Southwest by Craig Childs. And this is a kind of historical detective story. This author is seeking answers about what happened to a native population that just mysteriously disappeared from the American Southwest. From anthropology now to sociology, I also picked up a copy of Behind the Beautiful Forevers: Life, Death, and Hope in a Mumbai Undercity by Catherine Boo. And in this book, the journalist author writes about social injustice in a Mumbai slum. It is not even halfway into 2024, but I am already thinking about my priority nonfiction books for 2025, and I am almost certain this book is going to be on that list. I was very kindly sent these next 2 books by their respective publishers. First up is Shadow Men: The Tangled Story of Murder, Media, and Privilege That Scandalized Jazz Age America by James Polchin. This is very obviously a work of true crime that discusses a 1920s era murder of an ex-sailor committed committed by the heir to a bread fortune. He admitted to committing the murder, but he said it was done in self-defense against a group of men who had been blackmailing him, but it was unclear what they were blackmailing him about. This one sounded very intriguing. I was also sent a copy of Chipped, Writing from a Skateboarder's Lens by Jose Vadi, and this is a memoir and essays all about the power of skateboarding. The penultimate book I have to show you in this book haul is another sports book called Full Court Quest, The Girls from Fort Shaw Indian School, Basketball Champions of the World by Linda Peavy and Ursula Smith. This book shines a light on an incredible story that was somehow lost to history about a girls' basketball team from a Native American school in Montana who became world champions at the turn of the 20th century. If you know anything about me, you know I love women's basketball. Anything about women's basketball, I will read. And then finally, the last book that I have to show you in this book haul. It's one that I couldn't find a space for thematically anywhere else in this book haul, so I just decided to save it for last. It is called Mongo, Adventures in Trash by Ted Bota. This is the memoir of a South African journalist who moved to New York City and who began collecting treasures from the city's garbage. And he met other people who did the same. He became involved in that whole scene in New York City. This one sounded so unique, I just had to bring it home with me. So those were the books that I've picked up recently that most reminded me of the summertime. If you are interested in reading any of these, if you have read them, you want to share your thoughts, if you think I should prioritize some over others because you think some are really good, I would love to know any or all of that down in the comment section below. All of the books that I showed you today will be listed and linked for you in the description box below for your clicking convenience. Any other links I promised you will be there for you as well. And at the very bottom of that description box, you will also see links to everywhere you can find me around the internets, like Goodreads, Instagram, the Story Graph, all the places I'm the most active, in case you want to keep up with what I'm reading and doing right now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.